Hello and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I'm your host Peter and I'm joined this week by teacher and filmmaker Chris J. Allen. Chris, how are you doing?
Hi Peter, good thanks. Glad to be here finally.
Brilliant, yeah, it's great to have you on. I mean, I've known Chris since I was 11 years old, so it's great to finally talk Star Wars on this podcast with you.
Yeah, no, we've done it plenty of times personally, talking Star Wars. And yeah, you sent us the details about this podcast before you started, so I've been listening in since. But yeah, glad to finally be here on the air with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So obviously, Wednesday, the Clone Wars trailer dropped for the 7th and final season. So that was why we were going to record today. But then something's dropped in the night, like all Star Wars news does. It drops out in the middle of nowhere. So before we talk about Clone Wars, I just want to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So for those listening who don't know, sort of yesterday, Collider.com and Hollywood Reporter, were sort of reporting that the Obi-Wan Kenobi series was on hold. It had production problems and was on hold. And then since then, Variety and Entertainment Tonight have both interviewed Hugh McGregor, who was doing press for Birds of Prey. And he said that he's unaware, he was quite shocked to hear about these reports. And that, yes, production has been pushed back. So he was meant to film on set this summer, and it's been pushed back to January. And he's saying he loves the scripts, but they just want to retool the scripts a bit. And he says that as far as he's concerned, that it'll still air on time as scheduled.
Yeah.
Just what's your thoughts going into that, Chris?
I suppose, well, for one thing, it's no surprise that to some extent it sounds like obviously websites like Collider have maybe blown it slightly out of proportion to, get hits on their website. I suppose that's what, how they make money. But yeah, I mean, it being called off completely, as some of the like doomsayers were saying, seemed unlikely. But the retooling thing makes sense to some extent. I think especially after, some of the mixed responses we've had to Rise of Skywalker, especially compared to the like absolute success we've had for Mandalorian. I think it's something they want to obviously get right as the next big step, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, if you look at, let's just take Collider 2 years ago, I would say Collider on the forefront of breaking scoops, reporting real stories. And since then, in my opinion, they've gone down the pan. Clickbait articles, the video channels gone to rubbish now. They just seem to post deep fake videos and post trailers now instead of original content discussing things. So this article they posted is obviously designed for clickbait. Oh, more trouble with Kenobi. But obviously, Hugh McGregor has debunked it all last night by saying, "Oh, like, have we put production back?" Yes, it's only gone back 6 months. As far as he's aware, it's still going to air on time. And remember, we haven't had an air date for this. So for me, it's not as if it's solo where like, oh, we'll fire the director halfway through production. Like, that's a catastrophe. But like, this is not. This is just a studio. They've got time, so why not take the time? If you've got the time to retool things, get things exactly right going forward, then take the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's some of the problem, they've had for the last couple of films. Being so hard and fast on a deadline sort of thing, a release date they've got to meet. But it's kind of been, for better or worse, to some of the films, have kind of suffered as a consequence to that. So again, with the TV stuff, with Disney Plus, where, they can decide the dates themselves sort of thing and don't have to work around what other companies are doing, what other studios are doing. If it means, even if I haven't announced it, we've got to wait 6 months extra for a program, I'd be happy with that as long as, it turns out we get a better program at the end of it.
Definitely, yeah. I agree with everything you said there. And also, you got to think, we're getting Mandalorian Season 2 next year. The year after, we'll probably get the Cassian Andor series. So, like, we don't need this Obi-Wan Kenobi series straight away. Like, they can take the time with it. They can get all the little details correct and make the best show possible.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, again, and, that Mandalorian's really proved, or will prove here in the UK in the end of March. I suppose we've just announced that as well. for people who haven't, found other methods to kind of watch The Mandalorian at this stage. I think what that program's proved and what its, success has proved kind of, because I've hardly seen anything, negative about Mandalorian overall. I think some people thought it was dipping a bit in the middle, but, bar that, nothing major. I think but what that's proved is, getting it right is worth putting the time in for. So yeah, so again, and since they've got that coming, they've got Clone Wars coming, whatever other potential animated content they've got planned, along with Cassian Andor, along with Mandalorian 2. I don't think we're in a rush.
Yeah, definitely. I think this sort of brings an end to this conversation. I just want to get off our chest trees. Just that obviously, I honestly think Collider and to a extent Hollywood Reporter have been fishing for clickbait articles. Clickbait articles are usually negative, so they've jumped on this straight away as a negative. When really, if you break it down, report it properly, and wait for Hugh McGregor to speak, which he spoke like hours after these articles dropped. He spoke and cleared it all up, and that is that he's not concerned. He's still attached. Deborah Chow's still attached. They're just tuning up these scripts a bit.
That's the thing. I think every day those websites, when they can report something that's an absolute disaster for Lucasfilm, and they've got another massive, crisis on their hands, that's a lot more of an exciting article to click on than, oh yeah, they're just working quite hard on it, and they're trying to make it better. That's not as exciting as something to click on when it pops up on Facebook or Twitter or Reddit or wherever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they've certainly gone for the clicks over the integrity of the news, I believe, with this one.
That's the internet for you. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be brilliant. Excited to see Hugh back. Excited to see Deborah Chow direct.
I think Deborah Chow's really proved, again, going back to Mandalorian for a sec, properly proved her bona fides sort of thing on The Mandalorian. Just how amazing, she is a fit for the Star Wars universe. So when she got announced as showrunner for Kenobi based on this, yeah, perfect choice.
Definitely, yeah. So let's dive into sort of the day before this Kenobi news broke, and we got the Series 7, the final series of the Clone Wars trailer. It dropped out of the blue on Wednesday morning in the USA, and it was around lunchtime here in the UK. What were you doing when it dropped?
I was funnily enough, you mentioned, so I'm a teacher part of the time, teaching film and media, as well as being a filmmaker myself. So I was teaching as it happens. When I noticed, I had a notification actually from my YouTube app kind of pop up saying, Series 7 trailer or whatever it was. So I'm not ashamed to say, kind of had them kind of working on something and I watched it on my phone.
Yeah.
Prioritize these things. But it's relevant. It's a media product. So I can explain that it was kind of for work.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, that's what's so good about it, is that, like, obviously, because you work and teach sort of in the same space when these things happen, technically, you can say it is within your interests to be looking at it.
It's sort of relevant, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny. Like, this day was really weird. So, like, I'd be going at Wednesday. I'd gone to visit my mum, just to see her, because I don't live with her anymore. Just to see if she was all right. Just hang out for a bit. And during the day, I've been tweeting with Melissa Thomas. So that's at Melty Arts. She's a great artist. So go and check out her artwork. Just chatting about Clone Wars, and we were generally going, like, when are they going to start doing this trailer? Because you've got to think, obviously, we got the confirmation in that sort of teaser trailer at San Diego Comic-Con last year that, like, Clone Wars was coming back.
Yeah.
And that was out of the blue and shocked everyone. And then, obviously, we had the panel celebration where we got a trailer in that panel celebration, but that trailer's never officially been released.
Oh, okay.
So, technically, we've officially...
I do remember watching it again through some possibly slightly dodgy, someone's mobile phone footage from the back of the auditorium or something like that. But yeah, I probably.
It might even be on the feed. Like if you watch the whole panel feed from like on the Star Wars YouTube account, it might be like in there on that, but it's never been released like just as a trailer.
That rings a bell, actually. Yeah, maybe they released some of the promo footage, but not the actual sort of, because I think they showed a few scenes and stuff as well, didn't they?
Yeah, so like in the panel it was really in depth. They showed loads of stuff in the panel, and then obviously they ended with that trailer, which like to be fair now had an official release. So
Yeah.
like, me and Melissa were sort of tweeting back and forth, going like, oh, like wonder when they're finally going to like drop this trailer because like it's coming next month,
Mm.
and like there's been no work done, and then that was that, and then obviously like literally I was having me lunch, and then like I noticed someone tweet about it. I was like, what? And then it had actually dropped. So like really cool how like we've been talking about earlier in the day, and then all of a sudden like it dropped out of nowhere. So obviously I watched that about 10 times. So I mean, for me, my experience was I watched it about 10 times. I was really, really excited, loving the trailer. It's a great trailer. And then I found I watched it like after the 10th time. I watched it like a few more times, and I was still excited, but I was also getting really emotional about it. Like really, not sad, but I don't know. It was invoking some deep feelings from us.
Mm.
And we'll go into why. But I think we'll just do a breakdown of the trailer and then talk about it that way, if that's all right.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I've not just for context. I've not watched it 10 times. I think I've got two under my belt.
Two's enough.
Two something to start with. I think the thing I sent you just before we started recording. So yeah, my new approach I've done for the last couple of years now. Something I know I'm going to watch and enjoy. I watch the trailer on my phone because I know I'm going to watch the proper program when it's on, TV. Watch it in good, high quality. But I don't want to ruin that experience to some extent with seeing too much beforehand. So so I limited myself to watching this on my phone. So when I see the real thing, I can get the full experience. So I did this with Rise of Skywalker. Did this with the last few Marvel films and stuff like that. When I know I'm gonna see something big and enjoy it, I try to limit how much of the trailer stuff I watch beforehand, or at least in good quality. So I've seen it, but on a much smaller screen than you have, by the sounds of it.
Well, that's all right. I say everyone's different, and I think, to be fair, like the way not so much Star Wars, but I think definitely the way trailers are put together these days in the film industry, I think like they do give a lot away now. Like if you just go back to Batman versus Superman when they give away Doomsday in the trailer, and so the third act basically.
Yeah, I mean, even keep it on thing. Even in Rise of Skywalker, the big, the reveal of all the starship sort of thing at the end, in the final battle. Obviously that had been, I saw that as a GIF first on Twitter. Someone had taken a screenshot from that. I think it was even a trailer of a trailer sort of thing, where that big moment had kind of been
Yeah,
reported on beforehand, sort of thing. So it's one of those things. Obviously, it helps sell tickets. It helps get people in the audience. But how much does it take away from that actual experience? So I try to keep those on my mobile screen for the most part, at least.
yeah. So let's dive into the trailer. We start off with a Maul voiceover, which I think it's a brilliant voiceover. It's deep, it's emotional, it's full of rage. It's full of he's almost speaking as if he knows this as fact, which we'll get into. But he sort of states that the Jedi and Republic will die. And while he's saying this, you get a little cut of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Mace Windu with the lightsabers out, with a lot of droids around them about to attack them. We also get a cut of sort of the clones in a staging area getting ready for battle. For me, I think this could be part of a large monologue for Maul at some point in this series.
Yeah, I mean, from what we've heard, I suppose it sounds like it's certainly the last few episodes, which is the Siege of Mandalore, I guess. Which obviously sound like I personally went back. I'd not watched most of the Clone Wars since they were originally on. So last year I did a kind of a full rewatch of Clone Wars then Rebels. So I guess I'm right in thinking at this moment, Maul is, kind of still in charge of Mandalore.
So I say is Maul is in charge of Death Watch, and
Def-
Death Watch have seized control of Mandalore.
yes, but I guess the last time we saw him in Clone Wars is when he was kind of again in control, as you say, but he'd been slightly beaten down by Palpatine.
Yeah, so Savage is dead. His brother's dead.
Spoiler.
Um,
From here on in, I suppose, if you've not seen Clone Wars, yeah.
yeah, spoiler alert, guys. If you haven't seen Clone Wars, go pause, go back and watch them all, and come
Yeah.
back.
There's only 120 episodes or something. It won't take you too long.
Yeah. So yeah, I think obviously Maul's brother's dead. And obviously Sidious has let him live for whatever purpose. It's sort of hinted at, but never really fully explained.
Well, I guess that's it. I suppose, it's in if he's kind of being to some extent, back under Palpatine's control here. Um, that works to Palpatine's advantage to some extent that he's got control of Mandalore. By the time of Rebels, we see that Mandalore is pretty much under Empire rule. Certainly, some of the systems, as it kind of gets into those later series. And I suppose in the intervening time between Clone Wars and Rebels, Maul is kind of living large, I suppose, if Solo is anything to go by. Some things from this point are just kind of, to some extent, for a little while at least, are going to go, in Savage's in Darth Maul's favor.
Yeah, so like I've got a feeling, just a feeling that like I don't think Maul is part of Sidious's plan, but I do feel Sidious sees him as like he's a welcome distraction for the Jedi in the Republic.
Well, that's the thing, and I think that's the thing with Sidious. His plan, as much as Yoda says always in motion, the future is. Palpatine's plan, yeah, if there's things he can pick up along the way, but work to his advantage, and yeah, even if it is just kind of sending people off in the wrong direction, which maybe the more stuff is, yeah, that works for him, I suppose. Because I suppose to some extent, and we'll get into this more as we go into the trailer, I'm sure. But it seems like this story arc in particular, this Siege of Mandalore, probably crosses over with Revenge of the Sith to some extent.
Yeah, so obviously we always knew. So Dave explained it he's done it twice. So at Celebration in London was when it was like Untold Tales. So that was before we knew Clone Wars was coming back. There was a panel there, a really small panel actually, where if that panel was now, I guarantee it would be in the big auditorium.
I was there. That was.
Oh, there you go. We're both there in that panel then. So
yeah, that's
yeah.
funny thing. I think we only ran into each other once at Celebration London, didn't we? Despite seemingly being in the same room about 20 times or something.
Yeah, it was like once or twice, I believe. It was just crazy time. Wasn't really so busy. Like we tried to meet up a few times, but it was just a case of something came up or something fun was happening. It's like, oh, actually, I need to go to this panel now. And
I was probably in a line somewhere, standing waiting for something.
Yeah, definitely. So he hinted there about obviously how Clone Wars is going to end with the Siege of Mandalore. So I always took that as like, oh, so it ends with Kenobi and Skywalker going back to Coruscant, which is the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, and then the Siege of Mandalore happens. But I never thought about it in a way where, oh, it overlaps. I always thought of it as it runs up to, which I thought was really cool. But now, obviously, of course, it overlaps because the Siege of Mandalore is probably not something that happens quickly. So that probably does overlap straight into the events of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, that's the thing, I suppose, thinking ahead to Revenge of the Sith, the one big thing, well, one of the many big things I suppose we know has happened in that film is Order 66. And, the main Jedi we focused on for the entirety of Clone Wars, being Ahsoka, obviously we need to see, to some extent, and we expect or hope to see how she deals with Order 66. So it would be, thinking about it to some extent, I can see where you're coming from and assuming that would, it leads up to the film, but yeah, to then miss out how she interacts with Order 66 seems like missing out a big part of her story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think we're definitely getting that. I think this trailer does show that we're definitely going to overlap, which I think is brilliant. Again, it's just a subtle blending of all the stories into one in a really cool way, which just makes it more easier to love Star Wars and get involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dave Filoni's shown as well. Again, spoilers for Rebels coming up. But he's not afraid to sort of time hop in those eras as well. Obviously, the Rebels finale taking place partially after Return of the Jedi. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So the thing, it's not kind of hard and fast set that this one happens, before Episode 3, and this one happens, in this time before Episode 4 or whatever it is. There can be, it's one big story at the end of the day. And yeah, sometimes those stories overlap, I guess.
yeah, because I mean, we've been told we're getting 12 episodes, and it's going to be 3 story arcs, I believe. So one's obviously the Bad Batch arc, one's the Siege of Mandalore, the third arc, which I would imagine will be in the middle. I'm not sure what that is, which is cool to go into a series not knowing all of it. So obviously those 3 stories are going to take place at different times, I'd imagine. They might overlap at times, and I imagine they'll all come together at the end as well. Another thing what you're saying there about obviously how this season could blend into Revenge of the Sith is the next line. We get sort of Mace Windu, the council's meeting, but obviously the council on different worlds. So we're using the council, obviously using the holo projectors to talk. And Mace Windu uses the exact same line from Revenge of the Sith. He sends us a plot to destroy the Jedi. Which, do you think that's just him repeating the line, or do you think that is the time, that is the scene, the moment from the movie, just retold?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this because so Grant, who I work with at the college, but also my film company, Wickham 89, the kind of guy I make those the film content stuff with, that we do in video content. He mentioned about the scene again coming up in the trailer about when we see Anakin and the hologram of Padme together. Padme is kind of noticeably pregnant. But I think that scene, I think it probably is the same. It is the scene out of Revenge of the Sith, and it's perhaps explaining how we're getting an extended Revenge of the Sith, I suppose, in some extent, with this content that's going to be coming in this last story arc by what we can imagine. Because I think I was trying to think where it fits in and how where people are saying, oh well, that looks like a continuity error or something like that, or a mistake or whatever. But I think by now, Dave Filoni isn't going to make such a massive contradiction to something that's in the films. So I was trying to think how long Revenge of the Sith takes place over, and how we can maybe think that storyline fits in with that, and stuff that's in that briefing, where it cuts in the film, where perhaps we're getting the rest of the briefing now, where they stop talking about that and start talking about Mandalore, or somebody gets sent off on this other mission during that film, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Revenge of the Sith takes place over a longer period of time than you think. It's obviously it is a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean, but it seems shorter. But I think it covers quite a lot of ground. So for me, I think that the start, I think that is Mace's line from the movie. I think that is the moment. Did you notice that obviously Jedi Master Deepa Bilbar is in the briefing?
Yes, with her Padawan.
With her Padawan, who would be young Kanan Jarrus.
Yeah, no, that's a good. That's great. But obviously, coming back to Clone Wars now after doing Rebels, and this is why I think it's so ridiculous when people were tweeting stuff like, "Oh yeah, they've made this massive continuity mistake." They're not going to do that. Dave Filoni being at the helm isn't going to make something so, stupidly wrong. But stuff like having young Kanan Jarrus or Caleb Doom, I suppose, as he's still going by at this point.
Caleb Doom, yep.
Having him there just again helps tie it all together, and that's what I've always loved about Clone Wars and with Rebels after it, and now even having this connection again between those two series. Yeah, that was a great moment. I enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah, it was really cool. I love seeing young Caleb Doom next to this Jedi Master Deepa.
Was she ever in the original Clone Wars series? I don't remember her ever making much of an appearance.
I don't think so. you know what it is? I'm only going to watch it all once. So it's a lot of episodes to remember. I am going to do a rewatch
Yeah.
and try and get
No,
as many as I can, but I
so
don't
again,
think.
when I watched the series originally, it was when it was in kind of, you know, the order it was shown in. So last year when I did the rewatch, I did it in chronological order, which you can find the list for online and on the StarWars.com and stuff like that. But yeah, really rewarding to watch it kind of in that order. And a good refresher for a lot of those things as well. But yeah, I don't think she makes an appearance. Maybe one of the only ones from the council who doesn't kind of feature it to some extent. Again, if we're wrong, I'm sure someone will reply.
Yeah, well, that's what's cool. So obviously, like during the Clone Wars, obviously they chose not to tell a story from her point of view, but then now because of Kanan, she's obviously very relevant. And I don't know if you've read the Kanan 2 volumes comic books by Greg Wiseman, but they're awesome and they sort of tell the story of Order 66 from Kanan's point of view. So
Yeah.
obviously, Deep has a big part of that. So we get that story there. So now, obviously, we're going back to Clone Wars. We can subtly put that in. Fits perfectly.
Yeah, it's just nice to see that it's all, you know, again, but I think it does all tie, and it's what's always been one of the great things about Star Wars is, you know, figuring out how it all fits together and ties together. And, you know, I think that's something that Dave Filoni's always been passionate about, you know, showing those links and showing those interconnections and stuff like that. So, yeah, even if it's just a little moment, you know, the two of them have, even at the briefing room, it's just nice to see that continuity is being woven together, you know what I mean?
It is, yes. And then going back to the point you made, I mean, we'll talk about later on when it actually comes up in the trailer, but obviously the Anakin speaking to Padme through the hologram.
Yeah.
So obviously Padme is visibly pregnant. I also think she's wearing the same clothes she's wearing on Mustafar.
Yeah, looks similar.
So I think that message between Anakin and Padme is something we haven't seen before, but I think it takes place during the Revenge of the Sith timeline.
Yeah, again, I think it's got to. Again, you know, they're not going to go. They're not accidentally going to, you know, retcon the sort of reveal of Padme being pregnant to Anakin in the first, you know, I guess it's in the second sort of scene really after the starships crashed, you know, when they've got back to Coruscant. Yeah, I don't think they're going to, you know, find out it's pregnant beforehand. So yeah, I guess it has to be during Revenge of the Sith extent.
Yeah, so I think what you just said before about how this is going to be like almost like a extend Revenge of the Sith. Like you're 100% right. I think obviously scenes like this are going to be from Revenge of the Sith, but we didn't get there in Revenge of the Sith. So this could be before Anakin goes to the Jedi Temple. You might message Padme.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I was trying to figure where it's happening because it does look obviously quite a tender moment to some extent. But yeah, then the Moose. Good point. But she does look like she's wearing something similar to on Mustafar. Yeah, it's an interesting one. But that's the thing. It's obviously quite a tender moment, as I said. So you would think that would be before he turns to Darth Vader.
You've got to think just before he turns. Obviously, he goes to tell Master Windu the truth.
Yeah.
So maybe he messages Padme before and goes, "Look, I've discovered this. I'm going to go and tell Windu, and like we're going to sort it out. Don't worry, and I'll meet you soon." And she's like, oh, "Okay, yeah, I'll see you soon as well." And then obviously things get worse from there, don't they? Like the tragedy happens from there.
Yeah, perhaps that's when it really, you know, takes that turn. Yeah, could be.
Could be indeed. Moving on from that, we then get a shot of Maul, and he's using the Force on a clone. And how this felt to me was the way he's using the Force on the clone's head, and the way Maul's looking, the way his hand is, and the way the clone's face is. It reminds me of when Kylo Ren is torturing both Poe Dameron and Rey in The Force Awakens, trying to get information out of their minds.
Okay, so whilst you're explaining that bit doesn't, I can't remember that bit. So I'm breaking my rule that I just mentioned about watching it on my phone. I'm pulling up the trailer now, just so I can scroll through it as well and see what we're talking about here. So
it's literally a brief, like it's shown for like a second, if that, but it's Maul using the Force on a clone, and he's on it concentrating on his head. And it reminds me when I saw it reminds me of how Kylo Ren gets into Poe Dameron's brain when he's interrogating him, and when he's trying to interrogate Ray as well, was like, I got the same feelings.
Yes, okay, no, I do remember. Yeah, that's sort of vibe, isn't it? Again, a nice little link, something, we've pretty much one of the big first moments we'll get with Kylo Ren in episode 7. So again, nice to have it kind of, interconnecting, interweaving. It's something we do see in Clone Wars, this, mind reading sort of thing. Earlier on, they kind of do it on Cad Bane.
Yeah.
One moment's kind of coming back to me when a couple of Jedi are doing it at once. In like an interrogation scene, you might remember. So yeah, makes total sense. Darth Maul doing it here.
So for me, I'm wondering what he's getting out of the clone. And for me, I'm wondering if this is where Darth Maul figures out about Order 66.
That's interesting. Yeah, I suppose to some extent.
Because we don't know if Maul knows about Order 66. We know he knows about Palpatine's grand plan is to siege control by taking over from the inside almost seamlessly. I think he knows that, and he understands how to take over organizations and do that. So then he starts to copy the same things. That's how he infiltrates Death Watch, and probably later on how he infiltrates. Is it Black Sun? Crimson Dawn. Sorry, Crimson Dawn.
Oh, it is. Yeah. So I think in Clone Wars he kind of is working with Black Sun already at that point, isn't he? When he overthrows Mandalore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting point. Again, makes sense that he's doing it, but yeah, what he's doing it for is an interesting thing, because that's the thing. Obviously, it would only seem like it's going to be that last story arc where Maul would actually be coming in contact with clones, when because I don't think we've ever had actual clones on Mandalore yet.
So yeah, so I think to set the scene, obviously, Anakin and Obi-Wan have been battling in the Outer Rim sieges for quite a long time. We don't know how long, but it's a long time where he doesn't know Padme is pregnant, and obviously Padme hasn't messaged him because it's a secret love still. It's a forbidden love. So they've been in these Outer Rim sieges for a long time, and then obviously, at some point they must get the message from Bo-Katan and Ahsoka that, oh, guess what, we've tracked down Maul and he's taking over Mandalore, and then obviously then they end up going there, ready to strike with the clone army. And then that's when the call comes from Coruscant to say Kenobi and Skywalker need to come back. Big mission for them, and that's when they leave the clones in Ahsoka's command to take over the city, to retake the city. Yeah,
it's still interesting to think what he might try to be getting out of this clone war. I suppose to some extent, similar as we're saying to that point I made before, that Ahsoka, we want to see how Order 66 affects Ahsoka. Does Maul think, if he's figured out this plan, does he think Order 66 might end up coming for him?
Well,
just again, because he won't know the finer details of Palpatine's plan, do you think, all these clones are going to come and swarm on anyone force sensitive including Maul, I suppose, at this stage?
I mean, I think the clone's already after him, because it's like they've identified him as the commander of the enemy. So I think they're already coming after him. But then I think, yes, once Order 66 does happen, they might go, like, any force user in the vicinity, take him down. I mean, just to go, like, after the scene, we then get just to dive into Ahsoka a bit, and you're saying about Ahsoka and Order 66. We sort of go from there to sort of Ahsoka getting sort of not interviewed, but questioned by our two new friends, who are two female characters. And that's on Coruscant, I believe.
This was something we saw in that London celebration panel, as you mentioned.
Yeah. So in London, I believe it was meant to be like a boy character, and they've changed it out for like two characters now.
Yeah, it's one that's gone through a little bit of more retooling sort of thing. Again, to some extent, this maybe is what the middle sort of story arc is. What Ahsoka's been doing, off the grid, I suppose. since we last properly saw her in Clone Wars. Which you do see the sort of memory of her walking away from Anakin. So yeah, so this is possibly what she's been up to story.
Yeah, because that is Coruscant, because that's the circular downward shaft into the lower levels of Coruscant when she's on the speeder bike and where she meets her two friends.
Yeah, it's again a little while since that panel in London, but yeah, it's not 1313, but it's not far off, I suppose.
It's a similar one, yeah. So obviously, our friends ask her like, "Why would you leave the Jedi Order?" And it cuts to that scene of obviously her leaving Anakin. You got to remember that she left the Order because basically the Jedi sort of left her to her own. Obviously, she got framed for a murder she didn't commit, and they weren't really going to help her. She ended up helping herself. To be fair, Anakin did always believe her and knew that she would help herself. But then afterwards, after she proves her own innocence, the Jedi are a bit like, "Oh, like that was your trial, your Jedi trial. And probably we're going to knight her." And she's like, "No, you're just using that now as like propaganda, but like you weren't there for me when I needed you, so I'm leaving."
Yeah, rewatching the series, and again, if anyone else is doing the rewatch before Clone Wars returns next month, again, very emotional episode, but very sort of thought provoking episode in that regard as well. The cracks in the Jedi Order, I suppose, by that stage, and how something that has been addressed in some of the films in Last Jedi and stuff, especially these sort of mistakes the Jedi's are making along the way, leading partially, I suppose, to their own downfall.
Oh, I think it is because I mean, if you go to Rebels, obviously Ahsoka speaking to sort of Kanan and Ezra and just saying, "Oh, like towards the end of the war, Yoda became. You could tell he was in deep thought, and Yoda knew at that point, like as soon as he got into that war, like he didn't know beforehand, but we realized during it that like the fact we got involved in this war means we are false. Like we're going against our morals, we're going against our teachings." Obviously, they haven't done it out of like wanting to get involved in the war. There's no choice. There was no soldiers. Do you know what I mean? And there was no generals to leave, and obviously Palpatine sort of set that up where they haven't had a choice really. They've had to get involved, but because they did get involved, even for the right reasons, they should not be involved, even for the right reasons, and that's a big part of their fall, like their hubris.
Yeah, I mean, we get this again, not to jump ahead too much, but we get this repeated line from Ahsoka as well. Basically repeating a line of Mace Windu's from the films. These Jedi are supposedly keepers of peace, not soldiers. But at this stage, we've had 6 seasons of the Jedi's being exactly that. You know what I mean? So again, this is Palpatine's grand plan all along to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, that's what I've written down here. So obviously, she does use it. Keepers of the peace, not soldiers. I just want to quickly say how funny this line is coming. If you watch Attack of the Clones, coming from Mace Windu, and then like later on in the movie's like, "This party's over. Can't wait to slice some people up." He's like,
Well, I was going to say double-edged sword, but double-edged, lightsaber or whatever. Of these films, it's meant to be these stoic monks, but yeah, then the first opportunity they get, most of them, yeah, pretty happy to start slicing up battle droids left, right, and center.
yeah. So yeah, so we've got that sort of Ahsoka sort of saying why she left the Order, which I think is partly because of two things. A, they let her down in a moment of need, and then didn't really say sorry, just try to sort of pass it off as, "Oh, that's your trial. We're going to make you a Jedi Knight now." It's like, well, no, like you weren't there when I needed you. And then two is obviously the way the war's gone and what the Jedi are doing now, and the Jedi have lost their way. I think she's starting to realize that, so she is a bit like, "Do you know what I mean? I'm going to leave. I'm going to take time to find myself. I'm going to take time to figure all this out." She's not turning to the dark side. Do you know what I mean? She's literally just taking herself out of the Jedi Order and trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I mean, that's something interesting when she comes back in Rebels as well. Again, spoilers, if anyone hasn't watched it by this point already. But, it's the fact that she, when Kanan is training Ezra, she's still pretty defiant at that stage that she is not a Jedi. She is this different thing. And I suppose to some extent that's what Luke is, realized by the time of Last Jedi, the error of their ways, sticking so hard and fast to these rules, which the Jedi are doing in this time period especially, is part of the problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
there's definitely an arrogance there.
yeah, it's an interesting sort of reaffirmation sort of thing of that she's on her own path by this stage.
Yeah. We also get an awesome shot of like her and Bo-Katan meeting and doing like an awesome handshake. I'm very excited for Bo-Katan to come back, and I'm very excited for Ahsoka and Bo-Katan to team up.
Yeah, again, great character from Clone Wars, carried over into Rebels as well. Obviously ties into the Satine storyline from Clone Wars, then the Sabine storyline from Rebels as well. I had to get my head around that one for a second, which name was which. But yeah, very important character, great character. Definitely very happy to see more of her in these episodes.
Definitely, that's on what you were saying there. So obviously, Bo-Katan is the link from sort of Clone Wars in like the Satine Obi-Wan Kenobi storyline in Mandalore,
Yeah,
and links that to the Sabine and the Mandalorian storyline in Rebels. But I think because of what we've seen in The Mandalorian, and here's a spoiler for The Mandalorian, guys, so if you haven't watched the finale yet, please pause and go and watch it. Obviously, the main villain in The Mandalorian, Moff Gideon, has the dark saber, which he cuts out of himself TIE fighter. Obviously, Bo-Katan was the last person we knew had that, so maybe Bo-Katan's interacted with. I'm guessing he's took it off her at some point. So she links Clone Wars to Rebels to The Mandalorian.
well, again, I've rewatched them maybe more recently than you have. So I think in this time period, Maul has still got the dark saber.
Yeah. So Maul still got it, but what I'm saying is that
Still the time of
Bo-Katan is like links quite a lot of Star Wars. If you
yeah.
think about it now, so she links like sort of Clone Wars to Rebels, and then she's going to link Rebels to the Mandalorian because of the dark saber.
We won't be using it here, so but I guess maybe Maul won't as well, because we do see him with his double-bladed, new red lightsaber. So if he's using the dark saber or not here, time will tell. But yeah, it's nice again. Another lovely thing to have that link between Clone Wars, Rebels, and now Mandalorian too.
Yeah, and I think it's great to have like people. Obviously, sometimes the minor characters are the best in Star Wars. So Bo-Katan obviously isn't a main character, although I wouldn't call her minor. But she's obviously got quite a lot of story in it, and she links a lot of these sort of eras up, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's the thing. No minor characters in Star Wars. I can always have these extra avenues of life and stuff. And yeah, she's a great one for that, where this legacy touches so many different corners of the universe.
Yeah. Here's a quick thought for you. It's not about Clone Wars, but do you think Katie Sackhoff will play a Bo-Katan in season 2 of The Mandalorian?
Interesting question. So again, I guess she's not that much older than she's really shown in Rebels, eh? I'm just trying to figure out timelines here too. So again, when we see her in Clone Wars, maybe Bo-Katan's maybe meant to be around, in her 30s perhaps. How much further is Rebels on from that when we see her? Because 10, 15 years. But yeah, maybe with some makeup again, another 7 years, maybe. Mandalorian set after that. Does this timeline sound about right?
Yeah. I mean, it could be a flashback.
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, maybe a bit of makeup effect or a bit of flashback with timeline and stuff like that. Some history of how. That's the thing, I suppose. That link. It's interesting how Gideon is going to get the darksaber from Bo-Katan. Again, she's the last person we saw in the Rebels timeline using it.
Yeah.
Passed it on, when Sabine passed it on to her. So yeah, so there's a story there waiting to be told. And by the sound of it, again, not to the very little we know about Mandalorian series 2 is that we will be getting more Moff Gideon. So that story's again one which is could be interesting to see.
I think we will get it. I really hope we do as well. I think Katie Sack's brilliant, and I'm excited to see her live action. Hopefully. So moving on from that, we go into sort of some voiceover from Rex, and he's saying that basically the clones have mixed feelings about the war, and we get a little montage of them sort of clones in action, and some big explosions and bad things happening, and then obviously saying because if it wasn't for the war, they wouldn't exist. It's quite deep, really, to think about that and sort of war profiteering and what war does to society and people.
I guess by this point as well, from the sort of where we finished the Clone Wars, we had the series arc where, now was it Fives, the clone who kind of removed his chip sort of thing? Do you remember that storyline in the last series?
No, so I think Fives went off early, didn't it? So he attacked, he killed Jedi General. Yeah. So he attacked and then he got investigated. So this was really cool. I remember watching this series and it blew my mind because I always assumed that the Communion ones weren't involved. That was added after maybe in the factory or something, or when they got to Coruscant. So because the way they talk to Kenobi and they're very friendly with him, do you know what I mean, when he's there? But then as we find out in the season 6, the Lost Missions, obviously they do know it's there and they try to cover it up, which they end up doing.
So I mean, that he's the first clone who kind of
it goes off early. So it's Anakin Skywalker is there with 2 Jedi twins, I believe, and it kills one of them, kills one of the sisters. And then he's like, I don't know why I did it. And it's and Anakin's like, well, we need to find out. I fought with him for years. He wouldn't have done it on purpose, type of thing. And he hasn't killed me. And then so he goes back to Camino and they do the whole investigation. And then obviously the Chancellor and sort of the Caminoans cover it up.
But it's this defective sort of chip. But that's the thing. Again, an interesting thing for where we later see Rex in Rebels, along with Gregor and what's he called? Wolf as well.
Yeah.
Who've removed their chips. So I guess between, interestingly, I suppose, Rex saying how he kind of doubts Clone's role to some extent here. And, between that and when Order 66 happens, which is maybe in this series as we're predicting, I guess Rex and some of the clones are going to kind of remove their chips as well.
So do you think that the clones will remove their chips before or after Order 66?
Well, that's a good point. I guess I always assumed it was before. Because, we see obviously Cody clearly hasn't removed his chip when he kind of shoots down, Obi-Wan. But I guess we're kind of led to believe that Rex is a bit more, forward thinking and kind of got, even at this stage is kind of, his own person. I kind of think that he might remove his chip beforehand. How that would tie into the series, I don't know.
So here's my thoughts. I always thought they removed it before, and obviously he says in Rebels, "I would never turn on my general."
That's true.
But at Dragon Con this year, I believe it was. Well, not this year, last year. Sorry. Henry Gilroy, who's one of the writers, was saying that, we don't know. He was a bit vague about Rex participating in Order 66. And if you take Rex's word, if you look at what he actually says, I wouldn't turn on my general. Well, Ahsoka, even when Ahsoka was part of the Jedi, she was a commander. She wasn't a general. And then, at this point, she's not a Jedi. So is she a general? So maybe he's using these words carefully there, from a certain point of view and all that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, jumping all over the timeline of the thing here. But we obviously see, Ahsoka kind of reacting the way we see Obi-Wan reacting when Alderaan gets blown up. The sort of the hand of a head sort of pose when something goes wrong in Star Wars. We see Ahsoka doing this too, which we've got to assume is maybe something connected with Anakin's turn to the dark side, or indeed with Order 66. We see Yoda doing that in the Order 66 bit in the films. There's all this sort of bad stuff's going on across the universe, feeling it in the Force. So yeah, at that stage, I suppose Ahsoka is the superior officer to Rexfo. So if he is going to turn on anyone at that stage, it's going to be her. But yeah, it would be surprising to have that happen, I think. And obviously those characters are both very close in Rebels when we later meet them. So yeah, I don't think that would be the case if, Rex had tried to kill her, sort of thing. So yeah, I would imagine his. I'd be 90% sure his chip's gone by that point, I'd guess.
I've got a feeling, I don't know why, but I think his chip hasn't gone. I think he might try and get her, and then she obviously stops him and takes the chip out or helps him take it out.
Possibly.
And then he starts helping her.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, so I mean, obviously you've got the clones feeling that, and then we've got obviously Ahsoka. I mean, before we talk about Ahsoka and the sort of the feeling she's feeling, obviously we then get a cut of sort of this dragon creature flying, and the animation looks brilliant. And I think is it Anakin who's being dragged by it?
Yeah, I'm just on that bit now. So again, it's lots more clone action. They fly now as well. Poor Dameron's not seen this episode, obviously.
He's not played Battlefront 2 either.
Well, John Boyega could point him out some things on there, I'm sure. But yeah, it looks like it could be Anakin being, taken away by that, whatever that creature may be.
Yeah, so I just think for me, obviously we don't know what this creature is or what it's doing, but I think it looks absolutely brilliant, and B, it gives you the big feel of Star Wars adventure.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Again, even expecting and wanting these big stories to tie up things. What happens to Ahsoka in Order 66? What happens in the Siege of Mandalore? They're still very much obviously giving us, that classic Star Wars creatures and action and adventure in this clip, and that scene sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. So straight from there, we go into what you just mentioned. So we go into, it's almost like Ahsoka's on the bridge of a ship, and the ship's in hyperspace, and then she gets that that feeling of similar to what Yoda feels, of darkness and pain and suffering. It's also similar to Yoda as what he does in Attack of the Clones when he says Anakin is destroying the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, feeling that darkness happening, I guess.
Yeah, so I don't think this is Order 66 because I feel she's in the middle of Order 66, on the ground in the battle. I think the turn in the battle. I think this could be she's obviously escaped Order 66 on the ship, and I think she's feeling Anakin burning on Mustafar. She's Anakin's pain and suffering.
I guess the way this trailer's cut together, we see, as you mentioned, this scene of, we see her on the bridge of the Republic cruiser, it looks like, feeling this reaction. But then it cuts from that close-up of her, sensing this, to some doors opening and Anakin looking sort of particularly menacing. So yeah, I think I wouldn't think it would be as far gone as Mustafar, but if it's something, the scene, very angry looking Anakin, then him igniting his lightsaber on some old adversary, the sort of spider guy from the first chronological episode.
So that is Admiral Trench, and I thought he was dead.
Yeah, we've run into him a couple of times in Clone Wars. He's definitely got more robotic limbs than last time, I suppose, if nothing else. But yeah, we see, very sort of angry Anakin igniting his lightsaber. And, we've seen that sort of rage in Anakin before. Is she sensing when Anakin goes into the Jedi Temple, perhaps?
Yep.
Or is she sensing when Anakin's, um, you know, sort of striked against Mace Windu and stuff like that? So there's a couple of moments that could kind of be perhaps that she's kind of feeling that.
Yeah. So like I'm with you. I don't think it's Order 66, but I think it's definitely linked to Anakin, and it's when Anakin's doing one of these things that are basically can't return from.
Yeah, I think the editing there really suggests to me that it's directly linked to her old master.
Yeah, and I think obviously she feels Anakin's pain and suffering, and she takes that as Order 66 happening to Anakin. So
Mm.
that's what she believes. Where actually, sadly, it's not, as she finds out in Rebels. Um, so yeah, from that point, we then go into sort of the Anakin stare down with Admiral Trench as the door opens, which is very. Anakin's looking very focused, shall we say? But he's managed to get to the bridge of a separatist ship as well.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Anakin looks like he's on a pretty determined path here, I guess. Yeah, I mean, how much of that dark side is in this effect of a war is kind of seeped into him by this point. Well, it kind of looks like plenty.
Yeah.
Even how he ignites his lightsaber there, not dissimilar to how we see it when he is taking down the younglings and stuff like that. So again, it's not quite that full rampage we're perhaps getting Revenge of the Sith, but yeah, definitely leading up to it.
Yeah. So we also get more voiceover saying that this is all part of the plan, and he then says that everything's about to change. So I think he knows that Palpatine's executing his plan.
Something's happening, yeah.
I don't think he knows exactly all the details of the plan, but I think he's been privy to some of it, and he's assuming the rest.
Yeah, that's the thing, I guess. It's interesting more in this one, because obviously at this stage, Palpatine still has, again, depending where it happens in regards to Revenge of the Sith, but Palpatine still has Dooku as his apprentice, but he's very much got Anakin lined up, ready to go, sort of thing. So maybe Maul's something he's kind of keeping on the back burner, sort of thing, kind of helping him, especially in regards to gaining power in Mandalore. But yeah, maybe Maul's is, plan C or something at this stage.
So I think Maul isn't like he's not working directly with Sidious, and Sidious knows. I think it's a case of obviously Maul was Sidious's Padawan. And I think he was obviously brought up to learn the things that they would need to execute this plan. So obviously, I don't think Palpatine foreseeing like losing Maul so early on.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I think once he's obviously has lost him, he doesn't want him back to some extent.
He doesn't want him back, yeah.
I think he can see that like he's obviously useful to him being alive at this moment. Again with the whole Mandalore thing. So he's given him a glimpse of what's to come, perhaps, while it suits Palpatine's needs.
Yeah, definitely. So he's happy to let him like be the distraction, cause problems over there. And then I think obviously by the time you get to Rebels, he's then like, no, you take it too much. So now the Inquisitors are going to hunt you now.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, yeah, I think it's useful to be there when Palpatine's obviously in Order 66 is happening. To some extent, that he's in control of Mandalore, but he's very much not in control of Mandalore by the time of Rebels, where Imperial control is seemingly over most of it.
Well, yeah. So I mean, obviously, I think the Republic obviously win the siege of Mandalore, and then obviously the Republic becomes the Empire overnight almost.
Well, that's it. So, then there's going to be, from that point, Maul's not going to stay in charge there for too much longer after the Empire at that stage have got their kind of hold on the system.
Yeah. So going from like there, and obviously speaking about sort of Maul, and he's saying that everything's about to change, we then get this beautiful shot of it's like smoke or mist blowing across the battlefield. And we see Kenobi holding his lightsaber, and it's almost something like the Battle of the Somme, almost like World War II France, World War One France-esque. Looks beautiful, and this animation's awesome. And like, I just thought that like the way they made the sort of mist and smog blow over Kenobi as he's in his battle stance. I just think, obviously, like, Kenobi's a good guy. He's got a heart of gold, and it's like, whereas they've all been led down this path by a master puppet master, and like, like tragedy's coming, and it just made my heart sink a bit. Like, tragedy's coming.
Yeah, we don't get much Kenobi in the trailer. But that's the thing, at this stage, it's exactly as you're saying. He's just kind of, they're kind of a few years into the war at this stage, and you can just see the exhaustion that it's had on these characters, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. So I thought this shot was beautiful. Look, it's me of a movie, that I said.
Great looking.
Yeah, I think the animation for this, I mean, for me, if you watch Clone Wars from like season 1 to season 6, obviously, like, once you notice a big change in the animation, like from season 3 onwards,
Yeah.
because essentially Lucas, they decided to do it in house and they developed their own animation system. So again, like, groundbreaking technology and doing it all in house. Like, George is trying to change the game, like he always has, trying to change how we create art, because he is the master of that. So obviously, you notice when you watch seasons 1 to 6, the animation change and get better as it goes along because they are developing it all in house. But this trailer here just looks absolutely just stunning and beautiful. It's almost like, obviously, it's not live action, but it's almost like the perfect blend of, like, I mean, it's not a blend, but it's almost just, I don't know, it feels so visceral and real. Like, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, there's such an improvement, and you've seen, to some extent how they, part of the reason Clone Wars, I think, was dropped when Disney kind of took over was how expensive the animation was. But to some extent, I guess animation's kind of caught up with where Lucas was at that point. You know what I mean? Where now they can kind of keep pushing it further. And yeah, shots like that, shots like the next shot again of that Siege of Mandalore when it's all the Republic ships coming in. Beautiful, beautiful visuals. You can tell that there's obviously a very dedicated team on this, making it look, making it worth the wait, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's Clone Wars is just coming back, but like, even the footage here, I don't remember the footage from Celebration in the Clone Wars panel looking like this. It didn't wow us. It wowed us, but not as much as this has wowed us. So I wonder if there have been. I mean, suppose it only got finished last Friday, I think.
Yeah, it's going by a tweet by Joel Aaron, I think. Yeah, you can tell they've worked up to the minute on it. Again, that shot, that initial reveal trailer, where it was all the clone helmets, then going into the shot of, Anakin with Rex and the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
Looked good. But yeah, this looks next level.
Yeah, definitely. We then go into sort of pictures of the troops, and obviously they've got the helmets have been painted with Ahsoka's markings.
Yeah, sword celebration, didn't we? Again, sort of. Again, before this return series was announced, that this was going to be her sort of, to some extent, the start of a path to that redemption in the eyes of a Jedi. That she was, these troops have followed her. If you kind of remember, there was certainly some concept art for it.
Yeah.
Possibly unfinished. Obviously unfinished from then, sort of animatics. So yeah, great to see that, fully realised. And, obviously you can tell from a story point of view how much that's going to mean to Ahsoka. But she's obviously spent these few years sort of off the grid sort of thing. And again, whatever kind of happened in the eyes of a Jedi, where she was kind of, they thought she was in the wrong and then realised that they did the wrong thing. But these clones, the ones she fought with day to day, they kind of always had her back, sort of thing, to some extent. And you can see that here, that the fact they, have kind of decided to follow her, yeah, you can tell that's going to be an emotional moment.
Definitely, and I think it's not just a case of the clones not doing the armor up to match her skin, but also I think here's where Anakin is going to hand her 2 lightsabers, and he's obviously going to give them, and they're going to be blue, and he's going to be, because obviously his color's blue, and he's sort of like saying like here you go, like this is where you're meant to have been, this is where you're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, again, another link to sort of Rebels where she's got the clear sort of sabers by that point, but yeah, still blue here.
Yeah, definitely. So going from there, we then go into that scene we've already briefly touched upon. So Anakin and the hologram of Padme, and the sort of touching hands. It's crazy how much like hands are a language in Star Wars. Um, so so
Yeah,
from
that's physical as stuff gets in Star Wars, I suppose, isn't it? But
yeah, I just think so. I listen to a podcast called Sky Talkers, and like they break it down quite a bit. So like if you notice that like sort of especially if you watch the Last Jedi, like how hands are very like during the Force bond. If you notice that, like obviously the water dripping off Kylo's glove, and then when they actually finally touch,
yeah,
and then if you notice in Rebels, obviously, the Mortis gods, the painting, how the hands change, and that's how you get through into the temple and into the world between worlds. Hands or languages in when Luke cuts off Darth Vader's hand in anger, and then looks at his own metal hand with the black glove on, and that's almost like a realization of him. I'm like, hang on a second, I'm going down this path. No, I'm not. I'm going to turn the lightsaber off and throw it away. Like sort of hands, like of very much a language in Star Wars. And like I said, that's not something I've come up with. That's something that like the guys over at Sky Talkers came up with. And like when you watch it, it is. It's there. It's certainly there. So here, sort of Anakin and Padme. This is what I think about this. So Anakin and Padme are probably having a conversation. It's probably set just before Anakin is about to step down his dark path, and sort of the touching hands, but they're not touching hands because she's not there. It's not real. And
yeah,
for me, that's like it's almost a metaphor for their entire relationship, where it's been based on a connection they had when they were young. Because of Anakin being a Jedi, it's a relationship built on lies and secrecy, and they can't really ever be there for each other because of that. And then here, they're not there for each other because the miles distances apart, and that like touching hands, but they're not touching hands, and it's like it's just tragic, and it's like you're not going to connect with her until it's too late.
well, that's it. That's that's the Anakin and Padme's story in a nutshell. It's this tragedy, and yeah, you see this sort of thing, something which should be again, even from the start of the film, is Padme saying this is a great thing. For normal couples, what would be sort of thing for them, it's something that's so covered in tragedy and his eventual dark path sort of thing. Um, but yeah, again, another absolutely great visual. Again, totally agree with the hands thing. Again, something that's played on great in Last Jedi. This sort of way of representing this connection between people. But yeah, unfortunately here, and where it's this connection, something that means everything to Anakin. It's the whole reason he goes on this sort of dark path. Of the thing that really pushes him over the edge, at least. But even then, it's just a hologram, something that's even if it's something he wants, it's something that's literally out of reach to him.
Yeah, it's almost a misconnection. Like it's like yes, he's having that connection with her, but it's not real because she's not there. And I think so much of their relationship hasn't been real. Like, do you know what I mean? Because so she's just told him that she's pregnant in the movie. The first thing you would do is go and tell your best mate, wouldn't you? You go and tell Obi-Wan,
But that's
and
the thing.
the
And it's
council would throw a party for you. Do you know what I mean? But like, no, because it's all in secrecy, and he doesn't trust anyone, and it, it it's just mistrust, and it's just leading down this path to the inevitable tragedy. And I think just like this fact that like Anakin and Amidala are having this moment, Anakin and Padme having this moment here, and it looks really emotional, really deep, but actually they're actually physically not having this moment because they're not actually really in the same room. I think it just it sums up like their entire relationship and story is like how tragic it really is.
yeah, something even then, this nice moment, something hidden, having a dark room with a hologram conversation over Skype or whatever, you know what I mean? It's not it's always been against their odds, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, going from that, we then see sort of a hologram of Kenobi hooded, which I believe is possibly the hologram message the holocron message he leaves at the temple. Do you want him and Yoda retake the temple?
Oh yes, okay. Sorry, I'm just getting ahead slightly for that. Yeah, maybe for sort of Jedi have fallen sort of thing, but the one which is again plays a big part in Rebels. We see it in the version of the film as well. So yeah, that would make sense.
So I think maybe like obviously they send a holocron, essentially they send a warning beacon from the temple which says all the remaining Jedi return to Coruscant. Obviously Yoda and Kenobi are like, that's not right because we're going to die. So they go back to the temple and change it and then get out. So I think that could be the holocron message. So maybe it's Ahsoka watching the holocron message for the first time.
Yeah, perhaps again. Yeah, we get some. Yeah, I guess that's an interesting point. I guess yeah, it's interesting to try to figure from this what Obi-Wan Kenobi's storyline. Again, we know Anakin's more on this dark path. We know Ahsoka's kind of coming back into the fold to some extent, only for the fold to kind of disappear when Order 66 happens. So it's interesting to see what Kenobi might be up to. That could more expansion on that part of the story could be quite interesting for Obi-Wan.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're going to see more of him in the council, like interactions with the council. And I think you're going to see Obi-Wan become a bit stressed because they know something's not right. Do you know what I mean? I think like they know, they're aware. Kenobi is, and obviously doesn't want to have to lie. But Kenobi knows about Anakin. I think he knows about him and Padme. I think he knows about the baby at some point. And I think obviously, but he chooses to keep it secret because Anakin wants it secret. Do you know what I mean? I think it's so tragic. I mean, have you read the Kenobi and Anakin one-off volume comic?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that's set in between 1 and 2.
Okay.
And it's like closer to 2. But in that, it's a really good comic if you want to read about the fall of Anakin Skywalker, so definitely read it. It's definitely a good companion probably for this next series of Clone Wars. But in that, you get a bit of sort of Palpatine. He's taking Anakin places, and he's setting the groundwork. He's grooming him essentially. But there's a bit in here where like Anakin's like, I don't know if I want to be a Jedi, and Obi-Wan's like, there's a bit where Obi-Wan's like, well, like if Anakin leaves the Order, like I'll leave the Order with him and still teach him because I made a promise to Qui-Gon, and like I will teach him to be like. Well, if we leave the Order, we won't be Jedi in name, but we'll still like be Jedi in like beliefs and believing in good. And it goes show like how much he takes that promise to Qui-Gon as like his gospel. He makes a promise and he means it because he says here, like he says to Yoda in Phantom Menace, like if you don't let us take the boy, I'll take him anyway. And then obviously here Anakin's time of leaving, and Obi-Wan's like, well, if you leave, like fair enough. I don't think he says it to him, but like it's like done in like a thought bubble or something, or maybe he's talking to someone else, but he's like, yeah, if the boy goes, like I'll be going with him because I'll keep my promise.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think and again, Clone Wars does this to some extent as well, especially with again the Satine storyline on Mandalore. I think there's this extra sort of connection between Obi-Wan and Anakin where, to some extent, I think it's unspoken, but I think there's some acknowledgement or some understanding that there's these extra things in my life, but they're that close, obviously, and Obi-Wan is so faithful to what he promised Qui-Gon, and that he promised Anakin that he would train him, but he kind of is letting some of these things slide. Also, that definitely sounds worth reading. I need to catch up on more of the comics. I understand this.
Yeah, it's definitely going to get. So it's like a one-off volume now, so you'd probably pick up like a tenner, maybe a bit under. But like I said, it's got some really cool bits of like subtle bits of Palpatine grooming Anakin, and then like I said, it's got a really good bit of like Anakin struggling a bit, and Kenobi's like, do you know what it is? If he goes, like I'll go with him, type of thing.
Some great space battle scenes in this. Again, we get quite a fast sort of collection of clips towards the end. So some big fight moments coming in.
Yeah, we see like a big separatist ship get blown up. We see obviously the Venator class Republic Star Destroyers in action. We see some. Do we see some Arc fighters? I
Which
mean,
ones?
the Arc ones are like the I don't know. They're a bit like the clone fighters, where they've got the wings and they open up in like threes.
Oh, okay. What we do see is now this is going back to my 90s video game knowledge. Is it Z95 headhunters for one sort of like X-wings but only with one wing sort of thing?
Yeah, they were used by pirates, weren't they? I think or something like that.
Yeah, but we do get them in the Clone Wars a couple of times being used by the clones. I think in the guy who's the same species as Dex.
All right, yeah, Ponkrell.
That's the one. I think in that story arc we see a few Z95 headhunters as well.
I
Which are
hate
great to
Ponkrell.
me because I love those video games. Great episode as well. Those punk roll ones are amazing. Umbara, that's the planet, isn't it?
Yeah.
So seeing those in that episode was always great. So I think they make a brief little reappearance here too, which is pretty exciting. Some Y wings as well. Another.
Yeah, I mean, I love a Y wing, so I'm glad we see some Y wings.
Can't have too much of a good thing yet.
Definitely not. I try to tell my fiance that. So every time a new like Y wing set comes out or a new Y wing toy, I'm like, I need the Y wing. She's like, why do you need it? I'm like, I just do. She's like, well, how's this one different to the last one? I'm like, it's a different color.
That's literally the Lego set at the minute, isn't it? The slightly red coloured Y wing.
Yeah, but I'm like, I need it. I just want a wall full of Y wings. And then she's like, well, I haven't got any walls left.
No, that's pretty similar to my house as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're going to see like even the spaceship animation, looks like the spacebar animation looks brilliant.
Yeah, got some gorgeous stuff in these end scenes.
Yeah, so I think we're really in for like, it's weird to say, but I think we're in for deep, deep personal connections and tragedies and emotions in this story, and then we're also going to get like gigantic, galaxy-wide battles that are going to blow our minds as well. It's going to be the perfect blend of it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, linking those two things together, the last real scene we get in this trailer is the Maul and Ahsoka confrontation, but with obviously a big space battle or ground battle kind of going on outside. You see a lot of these explosions and stuff, but obviously it's going to be quite a emotional moment as well. Again, kind of the end of an era to some extent with Ahsoka and Maul. The last time we see them for, maybe 14 years or so, or however long after Rebels takes place. So it's going to be quite a big, meaningful confrontation, this one.
Yeah, so we get the voiceover of Maul saying every choice has led to this. Now we then see Maul and Ahsoka in the throne room of Mandalore, which I'm assuming is the same throne room where Maul beheaded Pre Vizsla and
Yeah.
where he killed Satine.
Yeah. So again, it's something that's for fans of the program, steeped in this sort of history of the program to some extent. You can see obviously it's Maul's taken over it, so it's not the beautiful palace it was with Satine sort of thing. It's dark and dingy and
it's empty as well, isn't it? There's not really much there. I think he emptied it out. It's nothing almost, which is what you could say Maul's about, like this nothingness.
Yeah, darkness consumed it and all the rest of it sort of thing. But again, this is the bit Ray Park talked about doing as sort of mocap stuff for as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so obviously they've put Ray Park, they announced it's a celebration, so the mocap Ray Park, certainly for the fight scenes, which I think you could see in the footage of celebration how crisp and smooth it was. So I think you could tell. And here, obviously, I was on top of this, obviously, like Maul and Ahsoka ignites the lightsabers, which looks absolutely cool. And then it cuts to Maul, and Maul ignites his. But Maul does the exact same stance he does when he first ignites his lightsaber on Naboo. He's got the lightsaber one hand in front of him. He's got one foot in front of the other, and his other hand's like almost behind him a little bit, perched back, open. And it looks brilliant. And then he comes forward and spins it, and he spins it almost like in the same way we see him do a move set from the Naboo battle from Phantom Menace. So it just looks so visceral, so real. Obviously, it is Ray Park doing it, so it is original and authentic. And I just think it's just so cool.
Again, it just shows off how far they've really come with this style. but yeah, again, how dedicated they are to making it what it can be now. His sort of reforged lightsaber as double-bladed lightsaber as well. Again, someone pointed this out on Twitter, so it's not me. But I miss things like this all the time. But you can see the kyber crystal through the half of the lightsaber.
All right.
I don't know if you spotted that. So again, like a nice, cool variant on the double-bladed lightsaber. I'm sure it'll be available at Galaxy's Edge in no time.
Yeah. Get
Five.
look. Definitely. I mean, what I noticed was like, so when you watch it, I thought he rebuilt his lightsaber like from. He's got half left anyway. I
Yeah.
thought he rebuilt the whole thing, but in a still image I saw on Twitter, so like the other half of the lightsaber is different.
Yes,
And
yeah. It up now, and again, it's kind of noticeably not as, and like Darth Maul in many ways, it's not as elegant, in this Sith glory that it once was. It's this one where it's looked like Darth Maul is by this stage, pieced together, and the cracks literally showing the crystal, because Maul by this time is half robotic and all the rest of it. So again, it's an interesting reflection of him as a character, I suppose. But you've got this not quite perfect former Sith Lord using this not quite perfect double-bladed lightsaber. You know what I mean? It's it's quite an interesting symbolic visual choice.
definitely, I mean, someone that I've seen people point out is that the other half of the lightsaber looks like production designs for. Have you read Dark Disciple, the novel?
Oh, okay. I've not, but yeah, go on.
So that was based on like a Clone Wars 4 episode arc written by Katie Lucas. So the novel's not written by her, but it's based on these 4 scripts that she wrote for this 4 episode arc of how Sarge Ventress teams up with what's he called? I forgot his name.
The guy with the dreadlocks.
Yeah, the really cool Jedi who's like hipster.
Yeah.
Oh, what's he called? Can you quickly Google that if you've got your computer open?
I'm trying to remember. I'm seeing if I can remember it first. Quinlan Voss.
That's the one, Quinlan Voss.
Well,
So
I'll back on my program if I can remember stuff like that. That's a good.
so the scene, it looks like one designed for her for inside that book. Like she almost had a yellow one once you come back to the good side.
Oh, okay.
So maybe, I don't know if it is the same one. I'm not saying it is because I don't know. If it is the same one, maybe the Hidden Balls like killed her, added that to his, and then bled it.
I think that's a shame in that we're only getting so few episodes of the Clone Wars back. But yeah, the Asajj story is only going to be told in sort of book form.
I mean, who's to say she's not in that? Maybe they've kept that secret.
Well, perhaps, yeah. Maybe that's ties into that middle storyline as well.
Because they've shown a lot of stuff, but obviously they're not going to show everything because there's going to be secrets that are going to blow our minds. Like, say on Mandalorian, obviously Baby Yoda, they kept it secret on purpose because they're blowing everyone's mind. So maybe it's like, maybe we're going to get. I mean, if that is her lightsaber, if that's proven, then I want to see him take it.
Is there some explanation there? Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to see that fight because I think it'll be awesome. If it's not, then fair enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be something that I would definitely like to see. There's obviously no hint of it here, but time will tell. Time will tell, I suppose.
It will, yeah. So I mean that brings us to the end of the trailer. So obviously we find out that obviously Clone Wars is back for 12 episodes. It's going to air every Friday, and that is from February 21st for those who have Disney Plus. What are your sort of thoughts going forward? Like, what are you most excited for about the coming season?
I think there's something about closure to it. Again, rewatching them all. Again, I really loved them when I first watched them when they kind of came out. But then rewatching them closer together last year, and especially in chronological order, you see how really well told a story the Clone Wars is if you take a step back and look at the sort of bigger picture. And seeing it as Ahsoka's story, which it very much is. How she kind of has this rise within the Jedi ranks and, her story alongside Anakin, but then her kind of fall. and finishing that, and obviously we know we get more of it in Rebels, further down the line, kind of what happens in that regard, but seeing what kind of how she finishes the war, yeah, that definitely feels like it's going to be rewarding. And again, that last tutorial arc especially looks like it's going to be something that is very much tied into her. So yeah, so I think that's going to be pretty rewarding to, revisit everything, revisit this time period, but especially get some sort of Clone Wars specific closure on Ahsoka in this time period. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's that sort of how it's going to tie into Revenge of the Sith and how it's going to overlap. And essentially, obviously, there's that scene where like Fela goes to Mustafar and tells the droids to power down. That ends the Clone Wars. So the series is going to run up to that. So we are going to get the definitive end of this series, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And I can't wait to see how it all ties in. And for those people who are like, oh, continuity issues, there's going to be continuity issues. They're already saying that scene of sort of Padme, the hologram talking to Anakin, is a continuity issue. Like I said, I don't think it is because I think it's set during the events of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
And I just think if you look back, right, to the first run of Clone Wars, the first 6 seasons, okay, look at what they did to make sure that Anakin never met General Grievous just because of one line of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. See, but again, it's stuff like that where I think people thinking they're breaking the rules here, and this, last series is totally ridiculous. But this program, and again, the detail and the level of animation, it comes across how much everyone involved in this program cares about telling a Star Wars story and telling it right. So yeah, so I don't think, and again, that's a good clickbait thing. If on Nerdist, you saw it like, does this break Revenge of the Sith continuity? And nah, of course it won't. You know what I mean? But care too much about this thing to let that happen.
Definitely, yeah. So that brings the end of sort of reviewing the trailer and obviously talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I just wanted to speak to you, Chris. I want to find out. Just got a couple of quick questions for you. What's your favorite piece of Star Wars merchandise that you own?
Oh man, that's under pressure.
I like to surprise you.
That's a good question, Mo. Interestingly, just before, I don't know, of all time, again, I used to obviously have all the figures back in the day and stuff, so obviously, treasured them. But a couple of recent sort of things, I've got, I started dipping my toe into the sort of Lego waters again recently. So I got the Mandalorian ATST before Christmas, which I'm looking at in my office as I speak to you now. So the one from Red Leg, from the 4th episode of Mandalorian, I guess it was.
That's the Raider ATST.
Yeah. So that's that's a recent thing that I'm pretty happy with. Damn, that is a good question. I'm going to think more about this. Talking of Clone Wars, though, I suppose one relevant thing, back in when the original run of Clone Wars was happening, on the Lucasfilm shop, they used to have on the website on StarWars.com. I bought a print from the what's it called? The sort of Godzilla storyline. That's
the Xeno Beast.
Yeah, but sort of like done in the style of a classic Godzilla poster. The sort of Zila Beast on Coruscant. So I've got that hanging in my hallway. So that's maybe that might be actually a great piece of artwork in that sort of classic style, mixing the Clone Wars with some 50s Godzilla film.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I want to see a picture of that print. You have to post it on your Twitter.
Yeah, I'll find that one. I'll dig that one out.
Speaking of Twitter, whereabouts can the people find you on social media, Chris?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm pretty easy to find. So I'm on Instagram and Twitter. Just my name, Chris J. Allen, CHRIS, J for James, ALLAN. It's Allen spelt the slightly different or awkward way, depending on who you ask. But yeah, I post about Star Wars plenty, post about a lot of film stuff. both the film stuff that I make as well as film stuff that I'm, passionate about. So I'm quite easy to find. I'm sure Peter will put a link to where you can find me as well if you'd like to. And again, yeah, always happy to talk Star Wars, and I probably am anyway. So yeah, easy to find.
Yeah, and obviously your film production company, where can people find that?
Yeah, so I mentioned that a couple of times. So we're called Wickham 89. Another difficult one is spelled WYCOMBE, bend number 8 and 9. Again, yeah, we do some music videos, we do some short films. Got a documentary kind of coming out this year that we've been making about the Big Pink Dress, a charity runner in the Northeast. So we've got that entered into a couple of festivals and stuff at the minute that we're waiting to hear back about. So yeah, so it's quite an exciting time as well. Got a zombie film coming later in the year as well that I made last year. So yeah, so some interesting stuff on there as well if people are interested too.
Awesome. Yep. I'll make sure I link those on our social media so people can find them and follow you there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
For those people who want to follow the podcast, you can email into the podcast with any questions or thoughts. starborspodcast@gmail.com. You can Instagram us at starborspodcast. You can tweet us at BorsStar. I've been your other host, Peter. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Pete Hitman Hart, as in the wrestler, because he's my favourite. Chris, thanks for coming and joining us here. It's been great to catch up. You'll have to come back on sometime down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I got here eventually, so yeah, you won't get rid of us now.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and may the force be with you.